Good morning, everybody. How are y'all doing today? I wanted to point out that this QR code here, which I know you're all able to use now because that's how you've been able to read menus for the last year. This QR code will take you right to a list of all of the resources in this presentation. And in fact, I'm doing a run through of this on video, and if it turns out, I'm going to put this on the page as well. So I'll have this barcode shown at the end of the presentation also, if you haven't got a picture already. So my name is Scott Henderson, and I am a internet marketer. My business is called Search Commander Incorporated, and I have been in internet marketing in one way or other since the late 1990s, 1999. I used to have a retail computer store that sold new and used software and hardware, and when we filled up our store, had to find another way to start selling it, and started selling online. So I thought I would start today by talking about Facebook ads. As you saw in the program, I was going to be mentioning and covering Facebook ads. Well, this week I had actually last week I had a rather interesting experience. I woke up to emails on Thursday that looked like this, and I found that some people had joined both my business and other people's business. Some of those people were named Scott Henderson. You can see that they have bizarre email addresses at Live and iCloud. And basically what started happening was those came in about 3:30 in the morning. A little bit later, I started getting emails like this, where I was removed as an admin on certain pages, and I no longer had access to certain businesses and certain email accounts. So long story short, I'm not going to take you through all the boring details, but here a week later, I still have no access to advertise. I've lost access to advertise not only to my account, but to any client accounts. This took, obviously, it took multiple people untold hours, because every single person that I was removed from all these accounts. The owners were removed from all these accounts. And the scary thing is, nobody can tell us what happened. I know that I did not have my account hacked. Nobody got in with my username and password. This is originally what I thought it was even though I'm an iPhone user and not Android, this is a hack that was announced, that was discovered and announced about a little more than, not even 2 weeks ago. But it turned out that this was not the problem. It's a very, very frustrating problem that, for me, it prevented me from being able to go in and put together any sort of presentation about Facebook ad accounts. But there have also been a lot of problems lately for a lot of people. So I had to kind of re-examine what I was going to do and figure out what I could do that would help you guys the most. I was torn between explaining semi-technical information about how Google search works, and then I realized that a lot of websites could really use some help. So what I decided to do was start this presentation off by showing some common issues and problems that I see all the time on people's websites. So without any further ado, I'm going to dive right in and talk to you today about common problems that I see on websites, and then definitely we'll be getting into Google a little bit. So, slow sites. As you know, right now, the majority of your traffic is probably coming from phones. And one of the most common things I see people do on phones, one of the most common things I see on websites is people, God, my slides will not advance. Is people using giant images. You know, you have to remember that an iPhone or an Android, they take pictures that are designed in high resolution, those pictures are actually going to be 40 inches wide. 4,000 pixels makes up more than 40 inches. So before you start to see any distortion in that picture, you could stretch it over 40 inches tall. Well, the average desktop monitor that people are using is 20, 21 inches. So they're using, when you use a giant picture like that and somebody views it on a smaller image, it takes a long time for that picture to download, and it has to be squished into a really small space. You know, the basic rule of thumb is, unless you have a website where you need the image to go from full edge to edge, where you've got this big showcase image on the home page, you don't need a giant picture. In fact, even if you took a picture from your iPhone, say, and used it as a full edge-to-edge showcase photo on the home page, it would still be twice as large as it needs to be. That's twice the size. This is from edge to edge on a full screen monitor. The maximum size of the picture should be 1920 pixels. What happens so often is that web designers will take these big, beautiful pictures and not take into consideration the fact that they need to be small enough to load quickly. Google has a page speed tool. Here's the link. Again, those links will be at the end. You just drop in your URL and it'll give you all kinds of information about how the site performs on mobile, on desktop. I'm not going to go into all the technical things that could slow it down. I mean, people use scripts on their website. If you have a Facebook like button, that's pulling scripts from Facebook. All kinds of websites will use all kinds of scripts and sometimes even images that come from other sites and domains. But in the end, one of the hugest differences we can make is to simply go in and properly resize the images. The next thing that we run into all the time is the websites themselves are difficult to read, difficult to absorb. When somebody looks at a web page full of text, you know, they read the headline and then they scan. They typically will run down the page and try to make sure that it's something they want to read. You want to try to break up your text. Look at the long, you know, a lot of web pages are filled with beautiful pictures, don't have a bunch of text, but so often you're trying to convey all this information and it all ends up crammed together, and honestly nobody wants to read this. Just with a simple batch of white space, you can make this look so much bigger. I actually used this example of a friend's website that I've warned over and over, mentioned over and over that he's got to do this. So I went in and cleaned up this page, and you can see how much better it looks. Also, you want to remember that people, excuse me, both people and Google really need to see headlines, subheadings on pages. Use multiple headlines, use bullet points, numbered lists. Break up the monotony of just white space and text. People will scan it first, then they'll decide whether to read it. And if you can make it easier for them to do that, then you're going to be rewarded with people sticking around longer, and also Google puts value on that. Overwhelming menus. This is something I see all the time. You've got this, especially on e-commerce sites, where they're following the lead from Amazon and eBay, who aren't quite as reliant on SEO as you might be, where there's this desire to put every single thing in the navigation. This is an example of a pet site that has literally from the from the product page for dog collars, for example, there was a direct link to the goldfish gravel category. You know, that's something that while it may seem like it's convenient for the visitor, it's really not the best optimization. If you have drop downs that go into other drop downs, You want to also take a look and see what they look like on a phone too, because it can be really overwhelming, and this is not something that's going to be very navigable. It's fine to have a link to your small pets page from your reptile products page or something like that. Here's an example of the same site where they had that same menu I just showed you, but then they also have a link to every single saltwater fish on the left. Then they have categories down below on the left. Then they also have brands. There are so many ways to get to each section of their website that, again, seem like it's a good, convenient thing for the visitor. But Google gets confused. Google doesn't know what's the most important thing on your website. You know, typically Google wants to see that you've got navigation. We trimmed down this menu. They had roughly 280, almost 300 links around their website on every page, and we felt that Google wasn't able to tell what were the most important parts of the page, what needs to rank. So this is what happened to their traffic. Right there you can see this is where we trimmed it down from nearly 300 links. We trimmed it down to about 180. Immediately they started seeing huge improvements. Now they were somewhat resistant. They really liked their menus and their links, and they actually took that back out. And you can see almost immediately what started happening when that got taken back out. Now this is another page. This is another site. I hid everything just so they wouldn't be embarrassed. It's nobody here. This is not an e-commerce site, but it's also a website that has an overwhelming menu. Even if you don't have an e-commerce site, there still is a tendency to want to put every single item you can in the menu. I see that all the time. And when we strip down the menu and make it much more simple, for example, you can have a services page. And on the services menu, you can have a link to landscaping, a link to Beauty Bark. But there's really no reason that you have to have every single page on your website, every single service you offer. It's okay to have it be a standalone page. For example, you can have a red rose dethorning page, but that doesn't have to be on your navigation. It should be linked to from inside other content. Perhaps you have sub-menus. When I get to the services page, then I got a sub-menu of services. But you don't want to have every single page on your navigation. When Google comes to your site, it actually wants to know what you think is the most important things, and the things that are linked from your homepage, the things that are on your navigation should typically be the most important pages, the ones you want to rank, and let the other pages get discovered through links that are on those sections. After too many menu options, we have hidden contact info. Let me ask you a question. Let's say this is a web page. Where is it that you're going to start looking for contact info? Are you going to start scrolling? Are you going to look at the about page? Are you going to look in the middle and start clicking through menus? No, you're going to look one place, the top right. You know, if you've got a standard web page with standard navigation, the last thing on the navigation is typically going to be the contact. This same website that I showed a little bit earlier, with all those links up at the top, they didn't have room for a contact link. I was able to find it in another typical place, which was at the very bottom. And I would encourage you to put that there too, because a lot of people will look there. But I've seen lots of websites where the contact page is buried under the about page, and that's just not practical. Speaking of contact, we've got calls to action. So buttons exist for a reason. You know, there are lots of different calls to action that you can have on your site. I mean, why is somebody actually on your website? You can have them subscribe for a newsletter. You can have them get a quote. Even getting directions is a call to action. You know, of course, if you shop online, you know, take them to your shop. You don't have to have that overwhelming category menu on your homepage. In fact, it would be better if you didn't. But let them know that you can shop online. And then, of course, call you. That's always an option. And book an appointment. Anything that you want someone to do is a call to action, and you should bring their attention to it with some sort of button, graphic. Pop-ups work, although I personally find them annoying. Don't leave it hanging. Ask them for the act that you want them to take. Also, I want you guys, when you leave here, to go through your own website on a phone. I'm sure that nobody's site looks like this anymore, but I still run into it all the time. How many times have you gone to a website and you can't even read what the text is without trying to zoom? Sometimes you run into sites where you can't zoom. Make sure your font is big enough. Go through, and if you've got an e-commerce cart, go through the shopping cart and actually complete a purchase as a customer was. If you have newsletter signups, if you have forms, try to fill those out. If you use a CAPTCHA, have you ever tried to fill out one of these CAPTCHAs from a phone where you're trying to figure out which one is the which picture has a statue and which one doesn't? It can be super frustrating. Try your own site on your phone. And another option is have a call button. If you want phone calls, I personally don't have a call button on my site because I don't want the phone ringing all the time. But I added one here to show you what it looks like. You can have buttons that only pop up when there's a phone. Use your own website and the functionality on your phone to make sure that it actually works. There's nothing worse than finding out from looking at your analytics down the road that people aren't converting or doing anything you want from a phone because the site doesn't work for mobile. This is a quick one. Have you ever seen a website that looks like this? They're still out there. You are not writing a ransom note or trying to find a lost dog here. You don't need to grab their attention with giant things on your website that are just obnoxious. Fonts should be consistent, colors should be consistent. You want something that's familiar and comfortable and is not gaudy and loud. If you are used to writing flyers, don't assume that that's what your webpage has to be. Your webpage is not a flyer. They're already at your website. They're already reading it. It should be neat. It should be orderly, and it shouldn't be obnoxious. Speaking of obnoxious, there is nothing that announces to the world that you don't care. Nothing that announces to the world more loudly that you don't care than having poor grammar on your site. I can't stress that enough. I just think it shows a lack of professionalism. It shows a lack of concern on your part, and it just looks terrible. Whatever text you write, read it to yourself. Write your text, do your editing, and then read it to yourself aloud. Whenever I write a blog post or if I'm writing something for a page, I will sit there in front of my desk and I will read that aloud. If possible, have someone else read what you're writing too to make sure it sounds okay. Google actually does give your content a grammar score of sorts, and the suggestion is to write at a high school level. Because that's what appeals to the widest variety of people. Well, at high school, most people can spell. So if you don't know the difference between there and there and there, get some help. Have someone else read it. I just can't stress that enough. Privacy and legal information from your page, that's gotten more and more important over the years. Back in 2018, GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, were released in the EU. In Europe, I actually did a presentation about it. During that presentation, I predicted that it would be coming to the United States soon, and of course, California led the way. California passed a law later that same year that took effect in, I think, January 1st, 2020, and they have not all, but many of the same regulations that are in GDPR. So did Colorado. Colorado passed it next, and then Virginia was the next one to pass, and at this point, those are the only three. Those are the only three states in the United States. Those are the only three states in the U.S. That have these data protection privacy laws. But Oregon and everyone else are working on them, and it won't be long before they're coming to your state. I actually put together a page on my site that would satisfy all of the GDPR requests, all of the GDPR regulations, and any that might come forward in the United States. I have a cookie banner on my site that will pop up if you're coming from the EU, because that is required for EU visitors. Being in the United States, I'm not subject to their law, but I get a lot of traffic from a couple countries in the EU, and so I do have a cookie banner that pops up for them. Contrary to popular belief, U.S. privacy laws, including California's law, do not require you to have a cookie banner. This is not something you have to have. Instead, there are other things that they do require, and one of those things is that somebody can come to your website and have the ability to ask for a copy of the data you have about them. The laws also require that you have the ability to let someone put in a forget data request. In other words, if somebody wants you to drop everything you know about them, you have to A, offer a way for them to do that, and B, follow their request. Also, if somebody wants to correct some data, rectify data request, that's the next thing that you have to offer to someone in order to be compliant with these absurd laws that are coming out. And the last thing is an unsubscribe. This removes them from everything, cookie tracking, newsletters, everything. So I've got this form that will offer all of these things. If somebody wants to do that, it's actually a manual process. I would have to go in and find what mailing lists they're on and do it. But my goal with this was to find a form that would satisfy GDPR, and I did that. Those sorts of things are going to be more important as time goes on. And terms and conditions are privacy policy, and terms and conditions and a privacy policy are things that should be in the footer of your website at the very bottom. If you're an e-commerce store, then your terms and conditions should have your refund policy included, and if not, then you should have a standalone page explaining your refund policy. Another big mistake is not using Google Analytics. Google Analytics is free. It'll give you all kinds of information about how people are getting to your site, what they're doing on your site. Even if you never look at it, you want to get Google Analytics and put it on your website. I'm not going to take the time to show you here how to sign up for Google Analytics, because I think most of you here probably already have it. But if you don't, here's a link to a 3-minute video I put together on adding a brand new analytics account. And I can also tell you that there's some important changes. This video shows how to go in and add something called universal analytics. If you've never added analytics before, or you've just started using it, take a look at this video and you'll see why using universal analytics is important. But definitely want to use Google Analytics. Google Search Console is, in some ways, it's like Google Analytics, but it also offers a lot of things that are not in Google Analytics. Google Search Console, Google put together this page, and Google Search Console is a little bit more technical. It'll show you how Google's crawling your site. It'll show you where some errors and crawl problems are happening. When you have new content, you can actually submit content through Google Search Console. You can remove content from Google Search Console. There's really only one reason, though, that you absolutely must get it. If you sign up for Google Search Console, you're going to get messages when something goes wrong. You know, if Google can't crawl it, if Google finds unnatural links, if you get hacked and Google discovers malware, you're going to get an email telling you this that you can just then forward on to your web designer. Google Search Console is really technical. It's really for more for SEOs than it is for the average business owner. But this part, being able to get emailed messages when something goes wrong, that's money. That's gold. You've got to do that. So it's a quick thing to sign up for Google Search Console and verify your domain, and then if something goes wrong, you're going to get notified by mail. Also, it's worth making a note of this URL or bookmarking it. You can do that from the handy resource list at the end, because this page cannot be accessed anymore from the navigation. This one list of every error, every issue that's come through your website or all websites that you might have access to in Search Console, this is a pretty handy page that does not exist anymore from the navigation. After using Google Search Console, not having your Google My Business claimed is something that I'm just amazed by all the time. Google offers all these local listings, the local maps that you see, those are Google profile pages. Those are available free. Businesses can claim them, and you've just got to have it claimed. Google My Business actually has a YouTube video on how to claim your business on Google, on GMB. I've got a link right here. And it's a really, really straightforward process. If you haven't claimed your business on Google by now, I would be surprised. But yet every month I'm surprised by another potential client whose Google My Business is just available for claiming. And then the last thing on my list here is underutilizing Google My Business. Google My Business is probably the most important thing that Google's released for small businesses. It's kind of taken over the search results. It's all you see when you do a search locally for a local product or service, and that's where I really want to take a deep dive in. So, Google My Business. I've enlisted a volunteer here named Randy, and Randy was actually a friend of mine in high school, still a very good friend. He had a website, he still does actually, and he has generously offered to share his Google My Business profile with you, so I can show you everything that's inside. So this is where we're going to dive in. If you have any questions, that's too bad because this is a videotape and you can't ask them, but here we go. So when you first get into the Google My Business dashboard, you'll see that there's a lot of stuff in here. The first thing you probably notice is that they want you to create an ad, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Other things here that you can see on your dashboard are basically areas you can navigate to from the left side also, things that are important. COVID-19 updates, we all need those. You can do things like update your availability, change your business hours, put in updates. Google rewards businesses that do this stuff. I will frequently go in, change somebody's hours for 5 minutes, and then change it back just to show activity. I have no proof of this, but the more activity, the more changes that you make to your Google My Business, the more it seems to show. The more you use it, the more Google rewards you. Other than anecdotal evidence and my own claims, I have no studies, I have no proof, but making changes seems to help. There's also a section on performance that I'll get into later. There's also some mistakes. For example, Randy has a logo. He's had a logo forever. This complete your business profile tile is telling us to add a logo, and it's wrong. So if you happen to notice that, when you know you have a logo, you're not crazy. This is something that's relatively new, just in the last year or two. They will actually give you a link. If you click that share review form, and this can't be accessed from anywhere else on the menu, it's only on your dashboard. If you click that button for share review form, this thing pops up that gives you a link you can copy. You can share that copy, you can share that link by email, you can share it on Facebook or give it to someone. As soon as they do that, assuming they're already logged into Google, this is what's going to pop up in instant rating for their business. That link can be very helpful. Um, Also, something that's here uh, is it shows your latest post. It shows a little bit of the statistics. Um, Posts, you say? Yes, Google is offering posts. If you haven't seen these, if you haven't tried them, now this is actually a post that was made way back in 2020, whereas this screenshot was made just this week. So it's still getting traction, even though it was made almost a year ago. There are all kinds of different posts that they'll let you make, and when you start to make one, you can do a general informational post like about a COVID-19 update that lets you add a button. There's offers where you can put in specials, coupons. You can even put a coupon codes at the bottom. Then they've got something else called What's New that's basically a COVID-19 update without saying so. They've also got events. If you're having events, you can put in start dates, end dates. Of course, adding photos to everything that you ever post up there is important. And then they've even got something now for adding products. Why you would want to add your products manually here when there are automated ways to do it, to like upload your store, is kind of a puzzle to me, and I don't know too much about this product stuff. But if you've got a couple featured products, you can definitely add them. So taking advantage of posts is something that has been proven. There are studies that show that posts work to attract attention and get traffic. Now, up until very recently, your posts themselves were actually appearing here. Like if you did a search for your business name, your posts were appearing, pictures and all, right here underneath your business information as of this morning. And frankly, I just noticed this. You have to click that before you start seeing your posts. Here you can see that it took all of 43 seconds. This post was made 43 seconds earlier. So this is a relatively new thing. I thought it would be neat to show you just how quickly those posts appear there on the Google homepage, but that doesn't seem to be happening right now. Still, I would make every effort to use them. The next tab down is info. This is where you're going to edit all the information about your business, anything that's incorrect, anything that's wrong. If you want to make changes, you're just going to hit those little pencil edits that are by each individual thing. Insights is an area that gives you, it's not quite as in-depth as Google Analytics, but it gives you a lot of really good information. How people found you, who found you, what they're finding you by, what search phrases they're using, stuff that's not being shown anymore in Google Analytics necessarily. As you scroll through, you can see all kinds of information, charts, see how things are growing. You can see how if they're getting directions. Looking at your photos. There's also this button here for new profile performance. This is brand new. It's only been out for a few weeks, and it's going to gradually replace what you see here. When you click that, you're taken into this slick little interface that shows you a lot of the same information, just in a different format. It's also very mobile friendly. There is a Google My Business app that'll show you all this information. You can get that from the Google Play Store or the Android store, and when you sign in from Google, you'll have access to all this Google Maps information. It tells you about all kinds of the interactions you've had. It also gives you call information. Now, you do have to have your call information enabled, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Messaging, if customers can actually message you right from the Google search results. And this is what it looks like on a phone. It actually said messaging, but just now I'm noticing that it actually says chat, which is a little different. If you have a booking system, it's possible to integrate that with Google My Business, and you can see all the information here. Of course, you can see directions. I kind of always thought it was interesting to see how many people ask for directions to an on-site service business like Randy's, but there are quite a few. And then, of course, how many people actually go to your website. So that's the insights report. Then you've got reviews, and this will allow you to see and reply to your reviews. And I do want to take a minute here to point out that you really, really need to read all of your reviews. Share that information with your staff, with your team. Talk about those reviews. Those reviews and how you react to them can really make or break a business. The more reviews you have, the more Google likes to show them. Every review is an opportunity for them to keep every review that gets read is an opportunity to keep people's eyeballs on Google and not leave and go to your property. So I really encourage you to not only read them, but to respond to them too. Both the good ones and the bad ones. Say, hey, thanks for taking the time to leave a review, or thanks for bringing that to our attention. We will address it immediately. Also, if you find that the reviews are unfair, let's say they're jerks, let's say they're rude, feel free to point that out to them. Feel free to say, we have no record of you being a customer. Feel free to say, we think this is a competitor leaving us reviews. This is obviously a fake profile. Give your best pitch, give your best response, because remember, you're responding to those reviews not so much so that the reviewer will take it down or remove it. You're responding to the reviews for all the dozens, hundreds, thousands of people that are going to read that review later. If somebody says you suck, you should be able to defend yourself, and I strongly encourage that. Also, solicit reviews. Google gives you that great link right there that you can send to people. So go after those reviews, and then of course, don't be afraid to brag about it. Show those reviews on your website. Depending on what kind of website you have, what kind of platform you have, there are lots of opportunities for importing those reviews directly to your site to show that, hey, look at all these people talking about us. People love testimonials, and you can definitely share those on your site, and you should. There's also something here in Google My Business about your calls. This is relatively new. You actually have the ability to see your call history. Now, if you go there and you don't have this screen, if you don't have this button here for your call history, you have to go back to the home page and look for the little card that says to try it out. Some businesses have had that turned on automatically. Others do have to come here and actually turn it on. But once you have it turned on, you can press the button for see call history, and brings you into this screen that actually shows you all the phone numbers, gives you information on whether it was answered or not. You can change the date period. It's pretty slick. And then if you click view call performance, you're brought back into this same report here that you saw earlier. Messaging, that you can get to that other report. Here we can see that Randy's messaging was turned off. I've tried to get him to answer his messages over and over. As a manager of his Google business, I see him, but of course I'm not answering. So here's an example of a client that's using it. This is a doctor. They have been getting quite a bit of activity. They have 10 locations. This is just one of them. They're able to answer quickly, respond to their customers in a way that's convenient to them, and Google loves it. And it's funny, the more that they've been using messaging, the more the messages are coming in from customers. Google's given them priority. I believe Google is showing their search result in local more than others because they're being very active with this messaging. Here's another example. This is a fishing guide. He has been blowing up, getting all kinds of messages, and it's really, really working well for him. Photos, you have the ability to put up pictures, and I strongly encourage you to share all kinds of pictures of your inside, your outside, your team, your products. You can see there's Randy's got his logo up there. There's even an option where you can see any pictures that the customers have added. To not use these is just a shame, just a waste. add photos regularly, add photos often, and really take advantage of this with Google. This is the products area I showed you before. This is so new, I really don't know much about it. But if you've got products, a couple things you can add features, I would strongly encourage you to get started here and give it a try. You can put in photos, give it names, prices, categories. It's brand new. Like I said, I don't know much about it yet, but it seems pretty valuable. I don't yet know where they're showing. I don't yet know where they're actually displaying, and I have not seen them in the wild. Now we come to services. This is an area where you can really shine. Unlike categories, services, they are offering you the ability to add services as you see fit. This is a relatively new, in the last year or so, thing where you can just type in all the services you want. As soon as you hit that button, it'll show you a bunch of services that it thinks you might want to add. And if you do those, all you have to do is click them and they'll get added to your list of services. But there's also an option here to add a custom service, and this is where you can make up anything you want. You can list dozens. As far as I know, there are no limits to the number of services you add. You know, things like lawn mowing, tree pruning, lawn edging, all these things that are not going to be categories. How many can you think of that you might be able to add? Over 100? As far as I know, there's absolutely, excuse me. As far as I know, there's absolutely no limit on the number of services you can put in. And that's going to make your Google My Business listing surface when somebody is searching for rose dethorning. Unlike categories, where categories, you cannot add your own categories. You have to get kind of creative when you're trying to figure out what categories are appropriate. The way categories work are you have to actually start typing, and you'll see things that'll pop up in your drop down that you can scroll through and select. You know, typing landscaping brings up starting to type landscape brings up a bunch of different choices you can make. Starting to type garden brings up a bunch of different choices you can make. You know, get creative. Even starting to type green can bring up a lot of things, a lot of categories that you might be able to choose that are appropriate. So do flesh out your category. Do flesh out your services as much as you can possibly do with anything you can think of, and then start typing some of those same services into the business categories options, because it doesn't cost any more to add services. It doesn't cost any more to add categories. So the more you fill it out, the better. Then there's this section on the left called website. I hadn't been here for a long time until I started making this presentation. The moment I clicked website, this started happening. It said it was creating a site, and within about a minute or two, boom, it had this site. I'm not going to take you through this editor here where I can show you that you can change the themes, you can change the kinds of text, you can add pictures, but you'll notice that they were very clever. They added the get a quote button, they added the call now option, they added get directions. It actually did a pretty decent deal. Now I didn't go ahead and actually publish this, but I do want to point out a couple things. First, there's this button right up here that lets you edit your subdomain. You can see that the URL for this would be california-air-duct-cleaning.business.site. You know, not super friendly. If you click that, you can edit it, but more importantly, when you go to edit it, you can see that there's a check mark here that says, make this my website address on Google Search and Maps. Well, if you don't uncheck that box and then you change it, then they're basically going to they're going to remove your existing website from your business profile, and they're going to put this in its place. So if you do decide you want to publish this and have an extra website out there that might get found by Google, which it actually might, then make sure that you uncheck that box before you go through the process of publishing. Now, as far as publishing that website, you know, does it actually work? Well, I can tell you that we've seen a lot of evidence where websites like this will get put up as what they call like local landing pages. For example, let's say you're a landscaper, you're in Portland. You might not want to have a page on your site about Welch's Oregon Lawn Care, because it just doesn't fit. You'll go to Welch's, you're willing to do work in Welch's, but you don't really want to feature it on your website or mention it. You can build lots and lots and lots of pages here in this secondary subdomain that may very well rank in Google rather quickly. I'm not saying that they're giving priority to pages to businesses that are using their website builder. But we've been doing some experimenting here, and we're finding that it does seem to be worth the effort to go through and put a site like this together. Then you've got the users tab underneath the website. This is really important. You want to make sure that you and not your high school friend are the owner of your website. Now, I actually had to go in. I was the owner of this site. Randy didn't even have a Google account in the beginning. But you can actually go in, make someone the primary owner. You have options of making someone an owner, a manager, or the primary owner. You can add other users. And this is really important, that you are the owner of your own business. Also, just a heads up, if you have multiple locations, don't use this location grouping because it actually will break the messaging function that comes through chat. You're suddenly not able to chat anymore. That's a bug that's literally been going on for 2 years inside Google, and they have basically refused to fix it. The next section here is create an ad. Of course, they want you to create an ad, and rather than give you much information about ads, I want to tell you what's happened to a client of mine just this year. So this is an example of an account that doesn't typically get a whole lot of traffic, but yet during a 2-hour period on March 31st, they got thousands of impressions, over $30,000, over 30,000 impressions, and over 2,200 clicks, all in a span of 2 hours in the middle of the night. And in fact, here, if you look, 2,291 clicks one night, when the typical day might have 8 to 10 clicks maximum in a whole day. I went through this. Excuse me. I went through this scenario with a rep from Google, trying to get them to refund his almost $900 in clicks. They determined that they were legitimate. Even though the rep kind of agreed with me, the official Google policy was it's legitimate. This same client also had a $496 click on what they call their dynamic ads. The rep went back, checked with management. He agreed that the site was set up correctly. We were bidding on the phrase slip and fall lawyers. We were bidding in Oregon. We were bidding only to people who were found in Oregon, and he's an Oregon lawyer. Well, here, if I zoom in, you can see the search term that was used was Las Vegas slip and fall lawyer. It said it matched me on what's called an exact match. An exact match means I put in the phrase slip and fall lawyer as an exact match, meaning they have to use that phrase exactly and nothing else. No adding, no additions, no modifiers. Well, Google has changed the way that they've done things, and they call it dynamic bidding. And to them, somebody searching for Las Vegas slip and fall lawyer who might be located in Portland matched on my ad. At a $496 click, they would not give it back. They actually, like I said, checked with management and denied us credit. They suggested a couple ways to prevent that in the future, but I wasn't going to add every other city. So really, really frustrating. Just this week, Somebody I know and respect that's been in the search industry a long time wrote this article on Search Engine Journal, and this is when I decided I just have to leave Google Ads out of my presentation altogether. So that's my opinion on Google Ads. This next menu item I'm not going to go into. This is how you would add a new business. This menu item is a list of all your existing business. This again has to do with ads. The settings here, it's really important that you go in and make sure that you have these settings all checked. If somebody is asking a question about your business, you want to be notified. If somebody is leaving you a review, you want to be notified. If someone sends you a message, you want to be notified. Make sure that you've got all these options checked to your preference. And then we've got support. Now, up until very recently, you could actually scroll down in this help area. You could go to contact us. You could start typing something here, choose other as, you know, if you don't see the reason there, you would choose other. And then when you got to this next step, you were giving contact options. Well, no matter what I typed, no matter what I found, the only way I could get any contact, any support for this presentation was email. It no longer was giving me a phone. At first I thought it was because the weekend, I was working on it last weekend and then a little bit again this weekend, and then working on it midweek this week, there was no option to phone. And so while you used to be able to get phone support with your Google My Business, that no longer seems to be the case. They actually have a get help area for Google My Business now. There's the URL. It's the same process. There's nothing you can do there that'll get you directly to a human. It looks like my time's about up. I think I'm right on track here. This is a list of all my resources. There again is that QR code that you can scan and take a picture of. That'll take you right to a page that has the ability to download these slides and get all these resources. There's the rest of them. And then I want to leave you in closing with a picture of my lawn. This is how my lawn looked in early June. And then in just about an hour later, it looked like this. How did I do it, you ask? With my amazing gardening and landscaping skills. Lawn paint. I have to say, it is highly recommended. I'll stop this here. Thank you very much for watching and coming. And I hope you have an optimal day.